funky colors. Shapes that swing.
It's impossible.
The year is 2022. Johnny Cashman Jr., 38 years old, lives alone in an apartment. His sister and parents located in Maine, 14 hours away by air travel. Johnny was known by friends and family as a kind man who was close with his family, unwavering in his duty to call his mother every single day. Until April 14th, 2022, when his mother didn't receive a call. Several days had passed and no one had heard from Johnny. The family organised a welfare check with the Lynchburg Police Department, and what they found shook their entire family to their core. The officers entered Johnny's home at 1415 Kemper Street, and inside was Johnny, dead. The officers contacted the family and informed them that Johnny had died of natural causes. Investigators had declined the need for an autopsy, and instead, Lynchburg's local medical examiner reviewed Johnny's corpse, and in the report had stated that there was no physical trauma, no evidence of drugs, and no signs of foul play, only noting an appearance of blood with fecal matter found around the home, likely due to a gastrointestinal bleed. With all their questions answered, Johnny's family decided to have him cremated and go through the motions of the death of a loved one. On April 29th, 2022, Johnny's ex-girlfriend and her mother enter his old apartment with the permission of his family to collect any items of sentiment or value. They opened the door, and what they found inside defied everything that they had been told by the Lynchburg police, the investigators, and the local medical examiner. What I'm about to show you is quite graphic and very disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. From the floor to the ceiling, blood could be found everywhere. The apartment was in shambles, and the bathroom was a sight beyond words that could never be forgotten. Johnny's ex and her mother exited the apartment and met with his next-door neighbour. They shared the images that they had just taken, and in turn, the neighbour pointed out that Johnny had a Ring door cam. Together, they accessed the footage and watched the moments before, during, and after Johnny's death.
Yo, what the fuck, dude? What are you doing, man? What are you doing, man? Stop. Stop.
Johnny's ex then immediately calls his sister, Sarah, and sends her all of the footage that she just uncovered. Sarah in turn then contacts the Lynchburg Police Department. To no response. Several days pass, and after leaving several messages to the officer,
Hello.
They call her back. Sarah was able to record the last portion of the call. With the transcription, yeah, the problem is you told us up front it was natural causes, and so we had the body cremated, so now there's no evidence. What I'm trying to convey was it was a medical emergency, and I was talking to your mum and I tried to clarify what I said originally and explain what I meant by the medical emergency being vomiting, blood everywhere, uncontrollably. 12 days later, on May 11th, a man is identified from Johnny's camera footage. Stephen Church, a passerby that had happened to travel from Elizabethton, Tennessee, after his employment fell through, and happened to meet Johnny, who agreed to let Stephen stay at his place while he sorted things out. Stephen claimed that on the day of his death, Johnny had come home drunk, and the two of them got into an argument, though it never became physical. Stephen stated that Johnny was physically fine as he left the apartment, and also admitted to wiping his fingerprints due to his past criminal record of burglaries, and didn't want to be accused of squatting. Six months later, Lynchburg's Commonwealth attorney announced that he would not be pressing charges against Stephen Church, citing a lack of evidence that corresponded with the pattern of blood loss and Johnny's pre-existing medical conditions. The final cause of death was ruled a fatal medical event and nothing more. As of today, in 2024, no one has ever been charged in relation to the death of Johnny Cashman, and in the eyes of the law, Johnny's death is not considered suspicious. What do you think happened? Was Johnny the unfortunate victim of a freak medical event that caused the amount of blood loss? Was Stephen Church in a shock, choosing to leave the apartment to not get involved? Or was Stephen Church really a murderer who walked free due to the incompetence of the Lynchburg Police Department, leading to the cremation of Johnny's body and any remaining evidence that could have possibly shed a light on this oddity?
For clothes that Tristan lost at Vol.1 detergent plus fabric softener.
At the intersection of 1300 South and 300 East sits a building quite like you've never seen before. It looks like something out of a storybook or a child's drawing brought to life. But the inside, according to the internet, is anything but. Since the 1970s, locals have walked and driven past the building, and yet none have ever seen a single child go in or out. What makes this especially unnerving is that this place is a daycare, known as Fun Time Kids Care. The place is run down and devoid of life. The windows are boarded up or covered with newspaper, and nobody knows exactly what is going on inside. And it's been this way for over 50 years. In a now deleted Reddit thread, user Disco Godfather shared a picture of the daycare to the Salt Lake subreddit, looking for anyone with information to the goings-on inside. And immediately, they're advised to stop looking any further by user Deathship. Of course, this statement has the opposite effect on the internet, as Reddit began to delve deeper into the conspiracy of Funtime Kids Care, as well as Deathship themselves, and found some interesting revelations. They found that Deathship was a linguist for the Air Force and was fluent in over 8 languages. He had also been stationed at Area 51 and was questionably discharged, and now spends most of their leisure time in conspiracy subreddits. Another user, a local mailman in the Salt Lake City area, claimed to have been inside the daycare a few times and noted that it was fully functioning, but the only strange thing is that no matter what time of day I showed up with their mail, it always seemed to be nap time. Looking at Funtime Kids Care's history, we can find a website that has now been taken down. It's bare, with only minimal quotes and stock photos to be found. Even these two images are the same, just flipped. The mystery as to the inside of the daycare only grew as the investigation continued across the internet. One user found a report on the center's inspection, a common routine for daycares to undergo as the quality of the learning and environment for children are assessed, although what they found was disturbing to say the least. A complaint in 2007 had been made due to the violation of Rule 100-19. Discipline measures shall not include any of the following: restraining a child's movement by binding, tying, or any other form of restraint that exceeds that specified in subsection 3. And another in 2014, stating that noxious puncture weeds and grass had been growing through the cushioning throughout the play area. The list goes on, with the centre not filling an annual immunisation report, an educator leaving children to get their granddaughter from school, 2 infants left for 4 minutes outside, alone, yelling at children, inappropriate sanitary facilities, and the lack of a legally approved director. It's worth noting that the earliest violation happened in 2007, 1 year after the company had switched owners. Several accounts testified to the center's integrity pre-2006, stating it was a wonderful place to send their children, and it wasn't until the new owner, Richard Yoakum, took over that the reputation of the center began to nosedive. Since 2015, the center's license as a daycare has long expired, yet the building is still up and running with the original branding. So the question still remains unanswered. What is going on inside Funtime Kids Care? Well, a few users in the area have taken it upon themselves to do their own detective work and find out for themselves what exactly is going on. User Speedbean claimed to have spoken to a friend that lived in the area. The friend had jimmied the door open, and inside the main room was a single chair facing a TV, displaying a live video of the other room in the building. Another user had managed to take a few pictures of the inside, one of an empty room, and the other of a single older lady walking around inside. There aren't any children in either photo, though it's definitely mysterious that the building is still functional as a daycare center, yet hasn't been used as a business in nearly a decade. Well, this is one mystery that I can put to rest. It turns out that after the company had gone under, Richard Yoakum continued to operate the facility at a loss for his elderly mother, just so she'd have something to do, something to maintain at her old age. Richard died at age 79 on Monday, the 8th of May, 2023, while the original building of Funtime Kids Care still stands today.
Only intended for a plane cut. You don't want to die of
Call toll-free.
I'll give you trouble. Pop your piece around the track if you get...
Along the coast of Wales, in the town of Conwy, runs a dual carriageway that leads into England. Train tracks run along the road, occasionally passing overhead via a cement bridge. It's here that on a quiet, unassuming night, a group of 4 boys would let curiosity get the better of them as they decide to explore the insides of the cement bridge. The boys discover a nearby manhole leading into the inside of the bridge. The group work together to move the cover, and then one by one, the boys descend down the ladder and into the narrow interior of the bridge. It's dark and claustrophobic as the group squeeze their way up and under the concrete obstacles that eventually lead into an opening. The boys catch their breath and regain their composure as one boy spots something at the far end of the passageway. A single folding chair facing the wall. On the wall, a torn page from a magazine featuring what could only be described as. But the picture hadn't just been ripped from a magazine, it had been modified. The eyes of the woman had been cut from the picture, causing the image to become more frightening than appealing. And laying nearby, in the same room, the boys had stumbled upon a blood-drenched and used. The sight was enough to send a wave of panic through the group as they screamed their way back to the entrance. The boys poured out of the hole and ran as fast as their legs would let them. It's a mystery that causes your hair to stand on end when you think about exactly what or who had been living there. An individual had willingly climbed inside of the dark bridge, walking through the pitch-black obstacles that lay ahead, to sit in the darkness and face the wall, pleasuring themselves to a photo of a woman with no eyes. It's disturbing to think about, and for the boys who lived through it, the bridge would forever occupy a space in their mind, an unfinished story with the ending ripped out. Except for one. After the original poster shared their story of the bridge to the subreddit Let's Not Meet, the popularity of the post only grew in number, with an overwhelming amount of comments asking the same question. Where are the pictures? Well, I forgot to mention that the images I've been showing you so far were all from the second trip down inside the bridge. But when they explored the area again, there were a few new items of interest, as well as some that had gone missing. Sometime later, the original poster is now a few years older and is feeling a little bit braver. He calls up his friends, and together they enter the area just below the manhole, staring back into the black abyss that lay ahead of them. The build-up of dust had worsened over the years, and combined with the darkness, created a truly unlivable place to live. As concrete tends to absorb and store heat, magnifying the smell of the bags of human feces that were now littered around the room. A sheet laying on top of a piece of foam to create a makeshift bed. A broken padlock, which originally had secured the manhole entrance shut. A used candle, a bundle of rope, a milk carton filled with an inexplainable liquid, a knife placed right at the entrance of the room, additional taped to the wall with a visible cigarette burn on her crotch, another picture that had been torn off except for the corner. If we look closer, we can see the date, 1997, meaning that whoever was here had been here a long time. A tag the group left behind after their first visit inside the bridge. And finally, the chair facing the wall, exactly how they'd left it. However, the room wasn't quite the same since their first visit. For one, the torn page of featuring the woman with her eyes cut out was nowhere to be found, along with the blood-soaked. They were gone, replaced with new and even more disturbing containers of bodily fluid. Just like before, the strange individual that inhabited the bridge was nowhere to be found. And maybe that was for the best. The original poster and his friends left the bridge, never to return again. And as for the mysterious deviant, it seems for now, at least, that he will remain an oddity of the internet.
Handsome, charming, specially marked boxes of Monster.
Excitement is at a whole new level when the puppets start chasing.
John Lang, 51, begins a personal YouTube channel under the persona Lang Marine. The channel spanned 17 videos, all consisting of CCTV home surveillance footage from outside of his house. From 2009 to 2013, John Lang, a self-proclaimed anti-corruption whistleblower, had been leaking secrets of the supposedly corrupt Fresno Police Department to the local paper, the Fresno Bee. The reason for John's surveillance: John was convinced that someone was trying to kill him. John then began his video diary, recording and documenting every encounter over the span of 2 years, in hopes that his death at the hands of the Fresno Police Department would be caught on camera. December 13th, 2014. Silver quad cab Ford 4x4 truck continually drove past my house as I did lawn and yard work in the front yard. After making eye contact with the driver of the vehicle, and as he passed by, I immediately received a hang-up call from 559-389-0357. The owner of this number is a member of the Fresno Police Department. January 17th, 2015. Sheriff personnel / canine handler standing in the left front of my residence with an obvious police canine. First, he stopped on the left corner of my residence. Then once I turned on the security light, he moved past the camera. Then towards the opposite corner of my property. I believe this person, who was obviously sheriff personnel with a police canine, was using the canine for some sort of dominance or socialization training on my dogs and the neighboring animals. This would enable them to gain access to my residence without my animals and the animals of the neighborhood barking or raising alarms. February 27th, 2015. I was followed to Copper Hills Elementary School while picking up my daughter from a softball game by a green Toyota Camry. The driver was a male, wearing a baseball hat. The driver made eye contact with me and smiled, which appeared to be an overt and sarcastic way to let me know that he was following me. He circled the inner parking lot, then parked in front of the school for about 5 minutes, then left. When I got home, I reviewed my CCTV system. One of my cameras had a 20-minute blank spot for the time interval. You can see the camera stops recording at time frame 5:11:54 p.m. then restarts at 5:31:02 p.m. a few seconds before I pull into my driveway. Apparently, these same officers may also have some type of access to my CCTV system. April 2nd, 2015. Undercover Fresno Sheriff personnel or associates check my driveway, then texts a second party on his cell phone. These guys desperately want to know whether or not I am home, so they may gain illegal access to my property and home. April 11th, 2015. At approximately 8:30 p.m, George and Maxine Ramirez, my neighbors, invited me over to their house. After an hour and a half, I start to get unexpectedly uncomfortable. I stand up from the couch and explain I need to leave because I've lost my wallet. As I walk toward the door, Maxine Ramirez immediately blocks my path to the front door and puts her hands up and says, "No, you can't leave, just sit down." I replied, "Maxine, please don't block me." As I move past Maxine and move toward the front door, Maxine yells, "George." As I made my way out to the front door, George, who heard Maxine's call, rushed toward the front yard gate. I can clearly be seen in the video trying to find a way over the fence and back into my own yard, as George, a larger man, blocks my access to the gate. He pretends to be unlocking the gate, but he's blocking and interfering with my access to exit his property. I hop the fence to the left at the front gate. George then quickly comes through the gate and follows me. As I am finally able to move to my own property and unlock my driveway gate, George and Maxine crowd and hover over me. I keep telling them to get back. They would not step back, and they kept insisting that I get back into their house. George kept yelling my name very loudly numerous times, which, at the time, really seemed to serve no purpose, yet it was quite alarming. Later, I realized George was trying to signal an associate with Fresno PD, who had illegally entered my house, and George and Maxine's job was to keep me at their property for as long as possible. And later, as I discovered, my front door lock, my printer, and 2 computers had been clearly tampered with. I believe one of the perpetrators who entered my home was Eli Rodriguez, who is a Fresno Sheriff employee working with the Ramirezes to illegally enter my property and home. Eli's phone number, 559-458-6774, is correct. He is the same individual who dropped off an outboard motor at my marine repair shop a month earlier, with the intent of framing me for an illegal sticker scam. He also had a young German Shepherd dog in the back of his vehicle. April 14th, 2015. Here they are, using an infrared thermal imager to see if I am home. They then phone a waiting second party with information as to whether or not I am home. May 12th, 2015. I was the lucky recipient of yet another episode in the show of force and intimidation. Fresno PD boldly and arrogantly posted up in gang formation directly across the street from my home to send me yet another Fresno PD signature message. May 22nd, 2015. My security light above my driveway burnt out, and some guy entered my property at about 4:45 a.m. in the morning. Luckily, I had my 2 vehicles locked, so he wasn't able to get into my vehicles. He possibly has a thin, light beard or goatee. Five months later, John Lang provides the local paper, Fresno Bee, with another story, this time involving another occurrence of corruption by the Fresno Police Department. John Lang had said to uncovered a license plate scanning scam in which Fresno PD would visit parking lots located in low-income areas and scan the plates for violations. After collecting the data, they'd follow the drivers a few blocks away and charge them, claiming to have happened upon them through sheer coincidence during patrol. John also believed that the Fresno Bee had also been in communication with Fresno PD, sharing private information of citizens who had been critical of their actions, using the data to intimidate, harass, and bully outcriers into submission. Following his statement, John was convinced that the Fresno police had begun their operation to silence him for exposing their scam. January 14th, 2016. John Lang posts a status to his Facebook. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. If anything happens to me in the next day or two, it will be the result of Fresno PD, my neighbor, and an employee at my job, Payless Brakes and Tires on Blackstone. January 15th, 2016. John contacted Corin Haggard of ABC 30 Action News with the intent of spreading his story, claiming that the Fresno Police Department were conspiring to kill John that weekend, or possibly tonight. January 16th, 2016. John posts another status. If I turn up missing or dead tomorrow, remember this van. I think I saw a couple of guys sneak out the side door and into the building when it was parked in the carport this afternoon. I've been causing the city of Fresno a lot of problems recently, which I now regret. Along with another status, 3 hours later. Anyone want to crash at my pad tonight? Must be a legal gun owner. I think the bad guys may come and get me tonight. Neighbours had noticed smoke escaping from John Lang's house and had flagged down a fire truck that just happened to be a few doors down from John's home on a separate call. The firefighters burst through John's iron gate to gain entry, but found that every door to the house had been barricaded shut. It took time to break through, and when they finally gained access, they found John Lang on the floor, bleeding out. The paramedics attempted CPR as he was removed from the burning house, but when he arrived at the hospital, he was pronounced dead. So the question remained, was this the work of a corrupt police force carrying out a plan to silence a whistleblower? Or was John suffering from intense paranoia, leading him to a self-fulfilling prophecy? Well, after John's death, there are a few clues that might shed some light on this oddity. Investigators searched John's house shortly after the fire, as the circumstances were definitely suspicious, to say the least. The house was messy, and the exterior doors had all been fastened from the inside with wooden 2x4s. John's phone also contained evidence that he'd made a call to his ex-wife the day before the fire. John's CCTV cameras were found to be working up until the moment the firefighters arrived, and that the interior cameras had stopped working entirely a day before the fire. And the last recorded footage showed John Lang sitting in his living room, wielding a large knife. John left the room, and when he returned, he turns the interior cameras off. Early reports of John's death stated that there were stab wounds found on his back, while the autopsy report claimed that all 3 wounds were located on his chest, directed towards the heart. The autopsy also found that there was a high level of carbon monoxide in John's body, as well as no evidence of drugs or alcohol. What's most peculiar is that the clothes John had been wearing at the time of his death didn't seem to show any visible punctures or tears, meaning that when John was stabbed, he wasn't wearing any clothes on his upper body. So what do you think? Was this the work of the Fresno PD after years of stalking and harassment in an attempt to stop John from exposing their crimes and stay silent? Or was this all the delusion of a person suffering from unchecked schizophrenic paranoia who had been recording the movements of the Fresno PD for years and in turn created a story of conspiracy and grandeur? Maybe John really was murdered, or maybe, after years of delusion, he needed everyone to know that he was right all along, even if it cost him his own life.
The universe. Fast food places serve the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Dinner? Burger. Oh.
But not at Jack in the Box. We serve real dinners like tender ocean shrimp.
Lunch? Burger.
We have meal-sized salads, not just burgers.
A woman and her co-worker returned to their adjacent hotel rooms after a long day of work. The woman opens her door first, and to her surprise, can see a stranger standing in her bathroom. She calls out to the stranger, but nobody answers. The woman looks a little closer and sees several of her belongings in the hands of the stranger. It seems that the woman had just happened to stumble upon a stranger in her room mid-robbery. I was in shock, and she was obviously very flustered having been caught mid-robbery. She dropped my bags and fumbled around with her purse and a white plastic bag. By this time, my co-worker was behind me, watching all this insanity unfold. This woman was scrambling and walking towards the door, and I said, "What's in the bag?" thinking it is probably my stuff. And so she said, No, it's just my things, I'll show you." And so she did. I looked, and I didn't see anything of mine. And so since I'm obviously in shock at this time, I let her leave. After the stranger left, the woman checked her bedroom to find it ransacked. Nothing of monetary value had been stolen, but when looking into the bathroom, she found multiple garments of underwear, bikinis, and clothes, haphazardly shoved into her own bags, including her passport and various medications. The woman was obviously shaken up and decided to go down to the lobby and call the police. She went back up to her room while she waited, and that's when she noticed a wooden bat with a flashlight attached to the end, lying on the bed that the stranger had left behind in her leave. The police eventually arrive and began to take the woman's statement, and as the police investigated the room, they noticed bits of drywall sitting on the bathroom counter, yet nobody could remember where it came from. The police checked all of the openings to the room, running with the theory that she had somehow pried her way in, but couldn't find any evidence. And the hotel management denied the possibility of the stranger having a spare key. With no other leads to follow, the police leave the apartment, leaving the woman to make some calls and tell her family about the incident. And as the woman begins to recall the details, she thinks back to the specks of drywall on the bathroom counter and has an idea. She asks her co-worker to give her a hand, pulling down the mirror sitting above the counter. And to both their surprise, there's a hole just big enough for a desperate robber to fit through. The woman ran downstairs to fetch the police once again, and moments later, they began to search the inside of the hole. A pillow, blankets, cigarettes, clothes, and a toothbrush. The stranger had been calling the space beyond the hole home. In a crawl space 2 feet wide, the stranger had access to multiple rooms on the floor, traveling between the holes left behind by the hotel's renovation, and taking advantage of the space while the owner was away.
Inside your crush is so irresistible, you can't keep a bottle full.